Well, hello there, and welcome to this edition of the DMZ America. Shit. I'm going to start this all over because that was about as bad as it gets. Well, hello, and welcome to this edition of the DMZ America podcast. It is Wednesday, April 19th, 2023. This is episode 98. We're getting close, Ted. We're getting close.
Closing in.
I'm Scott Stantis.
What happens at Big 100?
We haven't decided yet. We really do need to make a decision on this one. We have a couple.
Probably should. Yeah.
We have a couple of people asking, say, "Hey, we really want to help celebrate."
Maybe we should invite Biden on.
Okay, well, let's do it right now.
All
President Biden, you are more than welcome to please join us for our 100th episode of the DMZ America podcast.
For nothing but softball questions.
No. Yeah, it really will be pretty much like, wow.
So you're president. What's it like to live in the White House?
You drool a lot. What's that like?
Do you like your dog? Do you like dogs? Who's smarter, you or your dog?
Anyway, by the way, I'm Scott Stantis coming to you from the right.
And by the way, I'm Ted Rall coming to you from the left.
So, apparently there's some kind of court decision. Well, it wasn't really a court decision. It was a settlement, out of court to settlement from Fox News, who lied like a rug when it was discussing Dominion and their voting machines. I think what was it, Ted? Oh, well, north of $730 million.
$787.5 million.
Where does the 0.5 come from? I always wondered when you see these settlements, and it's like this, it's $300.6 million. You're going, where does that come from?
Yeah, well, it's like bargaining in a souk, right? I mean, what happened was yesterday was opening arguments. The trial was actually supposed to start. The jury had already been selected. Yesterday was the big day. And so nothing focuses the mind like the courthouse steps, as they say. So they basically game it out. They go back and forth, the two sets of lawyers, and they're like, it's like a souk. They're negotiating, and it's like the plaintiffs are saying, "Come on, pay more, because if you don't, we'll go to trial and you'll just lose." And then the defendants are like, "You can't be so sure. You never know what might happen with a judge. You never know what the jury might do. Things could go, and then we'll just appeal. So why don't you get it over with now?" And they go back and forth and back and forth. And then somehow they ended up here.
And here we are. And clearly Fox did not want this to go to trial. They didn't want discovery. They didn't want their people put on the stand under oath because they lied like rugs.
Well, the discovery already happened, Scott.
Right. That's where the emails and texts came from.
That's right. So discovery happens pre-trial. So everything was situated, and the lay of the land was very clear to Fox. The judge hated Fox. The judge told Fox, you guys we've already established that the statements that you made about Dominion were false. So as we're going to instruct the jury accordingly. Also, you have not provided me with all the information that I requested, and you told me that you did. So the judge was really down on the defendant, and so it was pretty clear that Fox was going to lose. And I want to be clear here. This is about more than just the money. I mean, typically when there's a settlement in a defamation claim, what happens is that the terms are sealed. Both sides issue a statement that says, in the interest of putting this behind us, Fox and Dominion have reached an mutually amicable settlement. We wish each other all the best, and we will come to each other's bar and bat mitzvahs, and goodbye. And but the terms are not released. So Dominion, as one of the concessions that they got, besides the sizable amount of money, $750 million, was also the fact that amount of money was released publicly. So it's a tacit admission of guilt, even though it's not a legal admission of guilt. And Fox also issued a statement saying that they acknowledge the court's determination that falsehoods had been stated by Fox News. So Fox definitely lost big. I guess what Dominion gets out of this is $750 million sure dollars. The widespread knowledge by everybody that what they did, that they had not lied, that they did not rejigger their voting machines, and that their machines are reliable, and they don't have to worry about potentially winning at the lower court level and then being dragged through one appeal after another over the course of many years with an unknowable outcome in the future.
Now, you wrote a column, I'm sorry, a Center Clip piece. Center Clip is the new app that Ted and I are involved with other commentators for short audio commentary. It can be 30 seconds to 5 minutes long. And you wrote, and you said that Dominion betrayed democracy. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, well, I think they betrayed potential plaintiffs in defamation claims. So, I mean, if you're a Democrat or you're an anti-Fox Republican, you're going to be mad because Fox was never really held accountable. We never got to have a jury hear. We hear all the facts here. We didn't get to depose. We didn't get to put Rupert Murdoch and Sean Hannity on the stand. We didn't get to hear what Tucker Carlson was going to say when confronted with those emails that show that text messages that show that he did not believe anything that he was saying on the air. We didn't get to see that. We didn't really get to drive a stake through Fox News. I don't really care about that. As a defamation plaintiff in two cases, one against the LA Times and one against an individual, what I determined was that even in a very strong defamation claim, it's because of the New York Times versus Sullivan ruling in 1964 by the Supreme Court and the anti-SLAPP statutes that are prevalent throughout the United States that are based on Sullivan, that it's almost impossible to sue even if you've been intentionally defamed by a media organization. Well, you can sue, you just can't win, or you might not, in my case, get all the way to trial. And what this would have done is it would have forced the courts, it would have held Fox accountable, but it would have also forced the courts to roll back New York Times versus Sullivan to some extent. It would have established the precedent that a giant media company doesn't have an untrammeled right to libel at will because of the First Amendment. And of course, common sense dictates that it does not and should not, but that's not the way the courts have been ruling against people like Sarah Palin, who was no question defamed by the New York Times, and in a myriad of other cases like Richard Simmons in California, who was falsely described and photoshopped in a dress as transitioning to becoming a woman on the front page of the National Enquirer. And not only did he lose that case, he had to pay the National Enquirer over $100,000 in their legal fees. Stormy Daniels, who also sued Donald Trump for saying that he called her a liar for saying that they had slept together. She hadn't lied, obviously, and nevertheless, again, he prevailed against her, and she has to pay him, even though he libeled her. So this could have I don't think it would have caused a full-fledged reversal of New York Times versus Sullivan, which is I would like to see, but I think it would have rolled it back a bit, which would have been a move in the right direction. Unfortunately, this opportunity for reform has been lost. They just didn't care about the plaintiffs who were going to come behind them. They just took the money and ran.
Okay, and one thing you forgot to mention also was the New York Times Russiagate stories, where they just made shit up. Columbia Journalism Review. We're not saying this isn't some crazy right-wing or left-wing site. This is the Columbia Journalism Review that did a lengthy article on the New York Times coverage of this story and how it got everything wrong and pretty much ran with stuff it knew not to be true.
That's true. And the thing is, interestingly, Trump, who's more than a little litigious, Scott, didn't even bother to sue the New York Times over essentially being called a foreign agent and a traitor to the United States, a stooge of the Russians. He hasn't sued I'm not really sure why he didn't. He probably thought he didn't stand a chance at winning it. And he's probably right, because again, it's a media defendant. I mean, these fuckers are unsuable. So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
set out to get you. And like they did with Sarah Palin, like the LA Times did with me. And there's nothing you can do. The law, and more accurately, the case law is really on their side. And there's strong institutional bias in favor of defendants in libel claims.
Does this hurt Fox News at all? I mean, do you think, I mean, it's 700, I mean, $750 million seems like a lot to you and me, but in all seriousness, I mean, they've shelled out tens of millions of dollars for, to buy off, people charging Hannity, charging, Carlton,
Bill
Carlson,
O'Reilly.
especially Bill O'Reilly. I mean, tens of millions of dollars. They have some kind of slush
Sexual
fund.
harassment and discrimination. Yeah. There's also there's another pending case, right? Votastic, I think, is the company. Yeah. That's an even bigger claim. Dominion wanted 1.6 billion. I think these guys want 2.3 billion, or maybe 2.7. Yeah. Yes. So it's of course the numbers that you ask for bear no relationship to what the jury decides to give you. It's entirely up to them. But does it affect Fox? I mean, my takeaway for Fox is their reputation has been severely hurt by this controversy. But I think in the end, the one thing that Fox got is they got to keep New York Times versus Sullivan. If this had gone to trial, that case might have been rolled back, which means that Fox can continue to do the same old. I think their model is that they would do the same thing all over again, because their base is conservative MAGA Republicans, and their base demands this kind of rhetoric. And so they would be out of business if they don't do it. I don't know that their libel insurance company ponied up any of this money. I bet it didn't, because this was due to their own wrongdoing. And really? It's sort of like the automobile. Like, it's kind of like if you have a car accident, you're not going to, and it's your fault. Let's say, you fall asleep at the wheel and you hit a tree. Well, your auto insurance company is probably not going to pay. Or if they do, they're going to raise your rates enormously because that's your fault. So the libel insurance company may have paid part of it, but I think really, truly, we can see what's going to happen with Votastic. They're going to size up this jury. They're going to size up the judge, the arguments, and at the courthouse steps, they're going to pay another ticket. That's how this is, and no one's going to go to trial. Fox just keeps buying their way out of their bullshit. So there's no accountability when you settle. You have to go to trial. You have to go to trial. You have to get a verdict. You have to navigate the appellate process. You have to go take it as far as it can go. If you want that accountability like Hulk Hogan got against Gawker, you've got to go to the mat. And no one's going to do that. These are just for-profit corporations. Even if the CEO is personally angry, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to maximize their profits and minimize their exposure. So I don't think they will, I think everyone will just take the money.
So you really don't think that, let's assume for a moment, okay, we know that they got 7 point something, $750 million for this settlement. Votastic, or whatever it's called, is going to come and probably get a $1.4 billion settlement. That doesn't hurt
the
them?
facts seem very similar.
That doesn't hurt them. I mean, I'm just thinking that, is that a body blow at all, or do they make so much goddamn money that this is nothing real? I mean, comparatively speaking.
Look, I think it's a dent. I mean, obviously you're going to notice when $2 billion leave your numbered, Swiss accounts, but it's like, but no, I think they make so much money, and that they'll be okay. I mean, obviously, okay. I would imagine that they're going to be a little more reluctant about going after deep-pocketed defendants with the plaintiffs with the ability to sue and pursue litigation to this point, which most people can't. They picked on two fairly large corporations that were able to go out to defend themselves and go after them. I bet they won't be doing that very much in the future.
So what about, lastly, what about reputation? I know what my take on this is, but what's yours? Does this hurt Fox News, its credibility? Does this put a dent at all in its viewership and how
I
they
think
view Fox?
I'm gonna say I mean, among those who know, like I always kind of viewed Fox as a very, very opinionated news organization. This changed my mind and it made me see it purely as a propaganda outlet, even on the news side. And I guess other people who are listening to me are going to be like, Ted, where the hell have you been? It's always been like that, you naive idiot. And you guys are probably right. But so for people like me, it's kind of a little bit of a whoa, you can't ignore it. There's no doubt in my mind that they're a bullshit organization, same way that MSNBC is. But I think for most viewers, this doesn't change anything, because if you're in the silo that says Fox News is faux news and it's GOP propaganda, this doesn't, you already thought that. And if you're a Fox fan, if you're a Republican, you just don't care, and you either dismiss it as liberal propaganda or you're okay with it and you're fine. What do you think, Scott?
Oh, I totally agree. This will not move the needle for them at all. And if it moves the needle at all, it's going to move it into more viewers. And yeah, they don't care. They just don't care. That comes down to that. This is their silo. This is their source of propaganda. This is where they go to the trough, and they're not going to go to anyone else's. So,
what other trough is there? I mean,
well, you could go to
that's the biggest
Newsmax,
trough.
you could go ION, you could go to or OIN.
OAN, which OAN always reminds me of onanism for some reason.
Okay, so
my favorite ism of all
Onan. Why is that, Ted?
Because I like the name Onan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes that hangs together. Anyway, we're going to be back right after this. We're going to talk about Kathy Griffin and post-traumatic stress syndrome, with both Ted and I think have been subjects of controversy. It's our job description. And people think that we kind of let it roll off of us. And I think we're going to give you a little insight into people like this, into our world, and how it's not as easy as it looks. So we'll be back right after this. This is the DMZ America podcast. I'm Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
And I'm Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
We'll be right back.